The work of composer and performer Robert Rich has significantly contributed to the general evolution of modern music. Straddling the ambient movement of the 1970s recording revolution, Rich is cited as being one of the first pioneers to have developed deep space music into its current definition, as well as introduce its many permutations with global ethnic influences. The eventual effect of this achievement has managed to reach and cross over into genres not typically associated with Robert's own.
We have this very unusual new technology, just like these cameras are allowing us to create movement, vision, and it's now, non-linear editing, which film brought to us first, 100 years ago. These things are really baby steps for human art form. And they're built into a capitalist model, aren't they? Really, they become a commodity, they become something to sell. And that changes the nature of art very much so, and especially when weirdos like us are trying to make a kind of spiritual art form, an art form that has a kind of a purpose beyond having another widget to sell in the five and dime mart. How do we interact with the commoditization of music? There's a lot of interesting questions that go to that, and so I think that when the audience, this is a very long way of creating a philosophical backdrop or underpinning that I carry with me when I'm thinking about the role that my art plays in time of my life, in the arc of this short span of time that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
If I have 50 years to 100 years of viable time, and let's make I can say almost 50 since I haven't died yet, and maybe another couple decades if I'm lucky. We have to take the moments we can, and if the moments where we define ourselves as we're growing up, we find out who we are, those first flashes of insight, will often create the spark that defines us. Albert Einstein came up with most of his important theories in the first, between age 18 and 28. And the rest of his life was spent honing, correcting, defining the terms of those first 10 years of insight. I'm not going to say that all of us are only good for a few years and that everything else is just rehash. And that's been my challenge, because I keep trying to come up with something that's new and different that still fits in with the way I define myself. You just do what you can.
Right.
People experiencing it define the experience, not the artist. We do our best to create a set and setting and a backdrop so that the experience of the art lends itself to the kind of thing we want people to experience. One example of that would be how people interpret some of my more intense, deeper work. People who are inclined to hear it as dark, whether they like that or not, will hear those things as dark. And those people who don't consider the void to be scary will find that work to be, attractive in different ways. And it's funny because, I go out on a tour and I'll have people at shows that, with grindcore, death metal band t-shirts and stuff, who really like my dark stuff, like Stalker and Below Zero. And they like it because they interpret it as dark, and they like dark. The funny thing is that I'm not a very dark person, and for me I have plenty of shadows that I carry around with me, but in general, when I'm making a piece of work like that, I'm trying to express a sense of awe or wonder at how small I am compared to the universe, and how vast the unknown is, I'm attracted by the unknown. I find it to be beautiful, and the void interests me. But the experience of that fascination with empty space will be different for everybody listening. Now, I could try to frame it with things like liner notes, with things like artwork, as a kind of implication that I want people to accept this as wonder and awe, not as, morbid obsession with death or something. And so you'll see how the art becomes framed, helps people. The very same music, like something like Below Zero or Stalker, I could put, a picture of a decaying corpse on the front and call the artist's name, Maggot Rot, and have exactly the same music, and make the music very attractive to the death metal crowd. Or I could put, a rainbow ocean sunset and, call it Unicorn Dreams, and say, music for deep massage, and have the exact same music and sell it in a New Age bookstore. The generation of the baby boom is pretty much the generation that created the music industry. It's the one that helped it explode. Rock and roll, jazz and blues, the Beatles. When music went from live to recording, and when you could have such a thing as a recording artist, a person whose art form is a recorded document. I usually liken that to something akin to the difference between dance and sculpture. Let's say if you're a figurative sculptor who makes models of humans out of stone or bronze or something, you're creating something which might take you 6 months to make, and will look a sort of idealized form from all angles for centuries afterwards. Whereas when you're a dancer, you're pretty much doing the same thing. You are creating a sort of idealized form of a human body, but you're doing it in the moment. You're becoming that sculpture and the sculptor, and it goes away. It's evanescent. It's a performance. I think of music and recording to be a similar difference. Being a musician is being a dancer, and being a recording artist is being a sculptor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Rich.
a few things to think about here. One is that when we associate the music that we love with our life, and what happens is that the music that we listen to becomes pegged to certain life events and parts when we are at transitional points. And so really, when we as artists put something out there in the world, each listener or viewer or whatever becomes a participant in that work, and they own it for themselves, and it's part of their life now once they've heard it and if they like it. And what happens is that people get anchored to certain memories of pivotal times in their life, times in high school, times in college, first dates, romantic moments, and the music that we're making becomes partially the soundtrack to those moments. And so, to a certain extent, in our culture at least, which is somewhat youth-obsessed, and which sells art as a commodity, the music that we make becomes a part of a generation that grows up with us. Usually, demographically, probably just a few years younger than we are as an artist. So, in my case, I was a bit precocious, so I think probably a lot of my audience is maybe 5 years older than me. But at a time when I was starting to do things and they were starting to hear it, like let's say in the mid-'80s or late '80s when they noticed what I do, those things would be timed to parts of their life. And so they associate memories of my music with those times in their life. And I don't expect them to go out and buy every album I make for the next 30 years. I mean, that's a bit of an investment to expect from somebody. So it's only natural that they start to associate an artist with early work, because that's when that artist gets noticed. And people have short attention spans. The fact that the music industry right now, the music business, I don't mean music, but the music business is in a very strange kind of state of senility, I think. It's that, or it's a state of like stupor from being overfed. If you think about it, music has existed since we had language, for thousands of years, and probably hundreds of thousands of years. And commercial music has only existed for maybe 100 years. And so it's really just a spit in the ocean.